Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. As probably all of you know, we've got a federal election coming up in a couple of weeks. And what I've been trying to do is reach out to different politicians of different political stripes from across the GTA and find out, what's going on. What are the issues? Why are they running? Why do they think they can win? And the difference that they're going to try to make. And I want to introduce you to a gentleman who I think very highly of, who's running as a conservative in the riding of, I think it's called Mississauga South Lakeshore, or is it just Mississauga Lakeshore?
Mississauga Lakeshore, yes.
Mississauga Lakeshore. Michael Rass is his name. He's been involved in politics for a long period of time. He's got quite an impressive resume. He's got a political science background from Wilfrid Laurier University. He was the executive director of the Federation of Ontario Law Associates. He was a lecturer in the government relations postgrad program at Seneca College, a chair of the Justice of the Peace Appointment Advisory Committee for the Ministry of the Attorney General. Most recently, he has been director of government and stakeholder relations for Meridian Credit Union, and he's got the nomination and the candidacy for the Conservative Party in Mississauga Lakeshore. Michael Rass, welcome to our show. How are you doing?
I'm well, and thanks for having me, Brian. It's a great pleasure to be here today.
My pleasure. So, right off, should we be having an election? What do you think?
No, is the short answer. We're in the midst of a pandemic. The country needs leadership. The country needs somebody at the helm. The Afghanistan crisis is bubbling up. There are forest fires out west, but the Prime Minister chose photo ops versus governing. As I've been saying at the door quite a bit lately, the Prime Minister really enjoys photo ops and is allergic to the hard work of governing. I'm the opposite. I'm not a photo op guy. I don't have the hair, but I'm interested in the hard work of governing. So if he's going to call one, we're going to fight it aggressively, and we have been so far. We've come up with a comprehensive plan. I know all of the candidates here in Mississauga and across the country for the Conservatives are working hard to get the message out, and it's working well so far. So no, we shouldn't have an election, but now that we're in one, can't cry over that. We're just working away and making it happen.
So I think it's a little inconsistent for the Liberals to, on one hand, be talking about, well, the pandemic is so bad, we need a vaccine mandate or a vaccine passport, and at the other side say that the pandemic's not so bad that it has to stop having an election and we can hold an election. So that is an inconsistency. But isn't it also an inconsistency for the Conservatives, for you, to say that we voted against everything the Liberals have been doing for the last little while, and we think they're a terrible government, but we don't need an election because you've been voting against them all the time. So logically, you want to kick them out.
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, that's the role of the opposition. But at the end of the day, we didn't actually vote against everything. We had constructive criticism on a number of points, but on the core fundamental supports for the pandemic, the provision of CERB, provision of Canadian the wage subsidies, all those things, we had suggestions to improve them, but we voted in favor of them. We supported them. Where our differences of opinion have been most strident are things like Bill C-10, the internet censorship bills, and things like that, which have nothing to do with the pandemic. So I think it is perfectly consistent to say yes, we're in opposition to the government, but we are we're also believe that we need better leadership, we need better governance of the pandemic and other pieces. I think our role in opposition, my future colleagues' role in opposition, has been to be constructive, not to be obstructionist. And unfortunately, the Prime Minister doesn't take any constructive criticism. He sees every criticism as obstruction.
One of the things that happened, on the very first day of the call of the election was the disaster in Afghanistan. Tell me what the Conservative Party, the Conservative government would do different, if anything, in Afghanistan.
Well, I would quibble with one part of your statement, which is that it started the day of the election called. I was reading about this impending crisis for weeks and months. Canada's retired generals and military officers have been warning that this crisis was coming for some weeks and months. I know at least 2 weeks before the election, there was some things happening in Afghanistan, and our Minister of National Defense was doing an announcement at in his riding at a long-term care home rather than in in the command center at D&D headquarters. I mean, that's the type of leadership that is needed. So I think first and foremost, what we would do differently, we'd be present, we'd be there. A guy like Aaron O'Toole, with a military background himself, 12 years in the armed forces, he would make sure we have a plan. One of his favorite expressions is that you don't engage in any mission without a plan. And right now we're seeing the government floundering away without a plan. And so I think that would be the primary difference. Conservative government would have a plan.
We're chatting tonight with Michael Rass. He's the Conservative candidate in Mississauga Lakeshore, first-time candidate, though he's been involved in politics for a long period of time. I'm going to ask him after the break, why now? Why is he running now? Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're chatting with a local politician tonight, Michael Rass. He's running for the Conservative Party in Mississauga Lakeshore. Michael, you and I have known each other through politics for, I think, a while now. And we've been on the same side sometimes and on the other side of each other at other times. I've always treasured our debates over beers at different places. And you've had, a lot of success in the back rooms, in policy decisions, in government relations and government affairs roles with different organizations and different companies. Why are you running now?
It's something that's been in the back of my mind for a long time. And I've reached that, but I've always said, I'm not going to do this until I'm ready. And being ready means a couple of things. Ready family-wise. My kids are of an age now where they still need me. They will always need me. I hope they'll always need me. But they are a little less dependent on me getting them to everything. They're 17 and 14. Although I must say my 14-year-old who's starting high school this year, when you're starting grade 9, you want to be anonymous, and seeing her name plastered on the blue signs right outside her school is probably not the best thing for her social life. But nevertheless. So family's ready for it. I'm ready for it. I think I've got the energy for it. But the other side of the story, Aaron O'Toole approached me last fall. I ran into him and he said to me, he says, "We'd really like to get your wife to run." And I said, "Well, I don't think she's interested in partisan politics." "Okay, you'll do." So here I am. So you know what, being second fiddle to the inimitable Karen Raz is not a bad thing. No, that is actually how that conversation went with Aaron. But beyond that, I've known Aaron for about 25 years. We've been friends. I worked with his dad at Queen's Park, in fact. And when he asked me to consider running, I considered it long and hard. And as I said, age and stage in life was the appropriate time, but it was also the opportunity to serve with Aaron and the rest of the team. Really attracted me. He's a man of honor, good family man, military service background. He's an intelligent guy. I think he's going to make a great prime minister, and he'll really surprise some people.
Can you win Mississauga Lakeshore? Yes,
absolutely.
How?
Hard work, obviously. Our message is resonating. Not to give peel too much of the onion back, but our numbers are suggesting this is a very competitive race. The reaction I'm getting at the door is fantastic, and I recognize you have to factor a certain degree of people fibbing to you at the door, but nevertheless, it's all in good spirits. But as I said, the reaction I'm getting at the door is fantastic, and what the numbers I'm seeing are very good. I also think the way to win is to take our national platform and relate it very well to the local scene and what's going on here. And that's something that I'm doing day to day at the door and in conversations with ratepayer associations, with other groups, with community leaders. And I think the message is resonating.
So you think it's national issues that end up being the most important for the voters in Mississauga Lakeshore?
By and large, people, but it's the context of how those national issues relate to the local circumstance. I'm hearing lots of conversations about climate change, about the need to restore our economy, about the need to restore accountability in Ottawa, to be able to trust our politicians in Ottawa again. So those are good conversations to have. I'm hearing a lot of conversations about mental health and the challenges that we have in the other pandemic, if you will. And so I hear lots of localized, very individual, very personal stories about mental health challenges, about teenagers facing anorexia, about the plague of suicide afflicting many families. So it's nice to be able to bridge from a platform that talks about those things to the local circumstances of what people are facing.
A lot of people were surprised that the big book that Aaron O'Toole came out with on his first day of the election had so much of a focus on mental health. Why was that? And what do you think you're going to do different than the Liberals in that file?
I don't think people should have been surprised if they knew Aaron and they knew some of the people around him that were advising him. They knew that that those are types of issues that are very near and dear to him and to me. So just as an aside, I'm on the board of a local mental health charity called Radius Child and Youth. Devote a lot of my time and a good deal of my checkbook every year to supporting mental health charities such as Radius. And if anyone who's got any awareness of the issues there, they recognize the challenges that we're facing are enormous. So I think what the big book, as you called it, the Secure the Future platform, is all about is putting a conservative lens, a practical conservative lens on the contemporary issues of the day. For too long, conservative platforms, frankly, have been fighting the last war rather than the issues of the day. And so when we looked at the issues that were facing Canadians, affordable housing, mental health, as we mentioned, getting ready for the next emergency, those types of things became our priority. And when you put them all together into a platform, they became a very comprehensive, I think, excellent document that shows that we have a plan ready that is ready on day one to govern.
I think people at the same time were surprised that you don't plan on balancing the budget for, what is it, a decade or something like that. I've always thought about you and the Conservative Party as fiscal conservatives. What do you think of that?
The hole's too big. The hole is so big, it's going to take that long to get us out of it. We're facing $1 trillion debt federally. Add that to the subnational debt, it's $2 trillion in debt, 340 or some odd billion dollars in deficit. To climb our way out of that hole, there's an old adage: when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. So first step, stop digging. And then slowly climb our way out of it and do it in a responsible way that doesn't harm some of the programs we hold dear, especially around universal health care and some of those pieces. As I mentioned, we want to make investments in areas such as mental health. To get there, we're going to have to dig our way out. It's good, but it'll be a little bit slower.
I understand what you're saying, but a conservative attitude of the past may have been that kind of deficit, that kind of debt for that long risks instability, risks increased inflation, increased interest rates, collapse of our credit rating, problems to our currency, et cetera, et cetera. That's sort of the typical conservative, monetarist attitude toward runaway deficits and continuing debt. Do you think we can live with deficits for a decade, or we just have to?
Well, I think we want to get out of deficit as quickly as practical. But as I said, the first step is to stop digging. I think what we're seeing now is inflation rates and concerns in the economy, concerns investors looking at Canada and being concerned with investing here, because they're worried that a Liberal government will just continue to plow us into deeper and deeper debt. They don't believe the plans. The first step that we have to do is to stabilize and present a credible plan to get us to balance and present that in a 10-year time horizon. The Liberal plan right now, that according to the Parliamentary Budget Office, has us balanced in the budget in 2070. Brian, you and I will be long gone by then, so maybe it's not our problem anymore, but boy, oh boy, it'll be our kids and grandkids and great grandkids' problems. So we need a better plan than that. And I think that's what we've presented.
So mental health, getting us out of our deficit problem, albeit by stopping digging the hole and building back over a 10-year time period. What do you think is the other major issues that policy planks that you're talking about at the door?
I'm hearing about climate change a lot, and I think people are very impressed with the plan that we've put forward. It's worth noting that our plan was released back in April. It was actually the first plank released by the Conservatives. It's a comprehensive plan, and it stands in contrast to the Liberal plan because it's a comprehensive plan that has many bullets in the gun, if you will. The Liberal plan has one bullet, which is to tax us more. It's a carbon price, an ever escalating carbon price, and after that, there's not a lot of substance beyond that. It's a tax that makes government bigger, gives them more control. Our plan is got a few different aspects to it. A goal of making 25% of our terrestrial land protected conservation areas, for example. Right now, it's at 12%. A personal low carbon savings account, which is an innovation in public policy globally that I know of other jurisdictions are looking at and with great interest. We're going to have a $20 a ton price on carbon, rising to $50 a ton, but no further. The Liberal plan, in contrast, has carbon taxes rising to well over $170 a ton. So that's a plan that's going to hurt Canadians. Our plan with the low carbon savings account puts money into an account that people can use to purchase an EV, an electric vehicle, purchase a heat source pump for their homes, purchase a bike, so they can get around a little bit easier, whatever they want to do. It has more emphasis on carbon capture, natural climate solutions, carbon border tariffs. So it's a comprehensive plan that meets the Paris climate targets by 2030, but does it in a way that grows the economy faster than the Liberal plan, which is, I think, key. We get to where we need to be, but we're not going to do it on the backs of families and hardworking Canadians. So just last week or 2 weeks ago, I was speaking with Michael Bernstein, the executive director of Clean Prosperity, an environmental NGO. And he commended our plan for being, and I'll quote him, a credible path to meeting Canada's 2030 Paris targets. And then he went on to commend the party and some courageous people in the party for saying this is not only a credible plan, but also one that, like I said, gets us to where we need to be. So I'm quite proud of that plan, and it takes a little while to explain it at the door because Conservatives haven't been speaking about these things for a while. But what I like about it most is that it's a conservative plan. It's one that puts power back in the hands of consumers, and I think it's one that we can stand on and win on. So I'm quite proud of that part.
So I firmly believe that climate change is the issue of our generation that we've got to tackle. And so I congratulate your leader for coming out with a plan. But it, with respect, isn't, or at least it hasn't been a conservative plan. The Conservative Policy Convention voted against things like this back in this past year. And Aaron O'Toole came out with this plan and carbon tax sort of as a surprise to the whole country and particularly to Conservatives. Doug Ford has been campaigning, adamantly against carbon taxes. Do you think that we can trust Aaron O'Toole to actually implement what you've just described? Or if you guys get majority government, will you go back to what historically has been the Conservative Party attitude that some people would say, certainly is against carbon taxes and maybe even denying climate change exists?
You can absolutely trust Aaron. You can trust me. We're going to implement this plan. It's a comprehensive plan. We recognize that climate change is real. We recognize that it is a challenge, but we want to find a conservative, practical solution to it that stands in contrast to the Liberal solution to just about every problem, which is to make government bigger. Our intent is to not make government bigger. Our intent is to find innovative policy that actually addresses the problem, and that's what we've done with this particular policy. We can quibble with Mr. Ford's particular perspectives on aspects, but I think he believes that climate change needs to be addressed just as much as we do. We might, as I said, quibble on particular aspects, but I think there's a ton of common ground here that we can find on all these issues.
We're chatting tonight with Michael Rass. He's the Conservative candidate in Mississauga Lakeshore. in the upcoming federal election. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more with Michael in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I'm chatting tonight with a gentleman I've enjoyed debating with. We've met a couple of times in restaurants and bars in Mississauga, and I guess over some different platforms. We've often been on opposite sides, sometimes on the same sides, other times on opposite sides of different campaigns. But Michael, I've always respected you. Thought you were unbelievably knowledgeable about the issues, very articulate in explaining them. And so it's a pleasure to debate you a little bit here tonight. So thanks for that, and good luck in the campaign.
Thank you. I'm going to build a reputation of being in bars with you, Brian. I think we should clarify that it doesn't happen often, but I do enjoy our encounters when we do get together.
Once or twice. So let me go through a couple of issues and see how you respond, if I could. Vaccine passports. Are you in support of them?
We support a better certificate system for vaccines because we're going to need it to travel internationally. But at the end of the day, the specific application of a vaccine passport is provincial jurisdiction. So I'll leave it to the provinces to figure those pieces out.
Do you think Erin O'Toole should be demanding every single Conservative candidate to have a double vaccine to be a candidate?
No. I just to clarify, I'm vaccinated. I'm quite proud of it. It's listed on my social media feeds and everything else. I've evaluated the issue very well, and my family and I believe in vaccines. So just to be absolutely clear on that front. With respect to mandating candidates, that gets into a very slippery slope of forcing medical procedures on people. And I'm nervous about that. I'm nervous about the constitutionality of that. I'm nervous about the appropriateness of that. I would much rather our position, which is to encourage people to get to educate themselves and to come to believe that vaccines are the best way out of this pandemic. You start forcing people to vaccinate, and I think you're going to be into some serious challenges. And I'm not for division. I'm trying to bring people together, especially in public policy issues such as this. And if I might get partisan with you a little bit for a second, I find it very troubling, and I'm very upset that Mr. Trudeau has decided to try and make vaccine mandates like this such a partisan issue and to do this. On July 13th, he's quoted, and I've got the article I can post. In fact, I have posted this to my social media page from the Montreal Gazette saying, "I don't believe in vaccine mandates. They divide Canadians." Then on August 13th, exactly 1 month later, he changed his mind completely. Why? Because he was about to call an election, and he thought he could find a wedge issue on us, and that is frustrating. He's playing politics with the vaccine issues rather than leading on it and persuading and working with Canadians to get vaccinated, and I find that frustrating.
Companies, businesses, banks, sports venues, restaurants, should they be able to demand vaccinations for employees and or for visitors?
I think those are their choices. It fits within the labor code. It fits within their particular circumstances. But likewise, companies can choose not to and deal with the marketplace, if you will, just as well. I think it makes sense for sports venues and cetera to ask for proof of vaccination. I would just add a caveat. There should be also a choice to have a proof of negative testing, which is the position that Erin O'Toole has come out with, and for our party, which is that we're suggesting people vaccinate and or provide a proof of negative test. So one of the things that we've done in our campaign, for example, is that we've asked that everyone that comes into our campaign office is vaccinated. If they choose not to be vaccinated, we actually have a rapid test available for them to help to prove that they are COVID negative and can work with the rest of our team safely.
Back in January, people were disappointed that we hadn't done as well with vaccinations as the Americans, as the Israelis, as the UK had done. But today, we're actually doing quite well versus our peers internationally in regards to double vaccinations. How do you evaluate the Trudeau government's handling of the pandemic?
Their job was to procure the vaccines. It was the province's jobs to administer the vaccines. When they were finally procured, the provinces delivered, but they were procured late. They were delivered late. Now that they're here, the provinces have delivered and have done, I think, admirable jobs in all provinces. I'm not just talking about Ontario. In setting up the clinics, making it accessible, making it easy for people to get a vaccine. I cannot give Justin Trudeau and his government the credit for delivering vaccines in clinics, because their job was to get it into the country, and after that, it was up to the provinces. And so, when it was here, when it finally got here, it got distributed quite well. So good on them.
Some people are very disappointed that we don't have domestic production of vaccines. Are you? Should we do something about it?
Yes, absolutely. One of our key platform items is to secure domestic supply going forward. We do have a robust pharmaceutical industry right here in Mississauga. We have a robust vaccine industry, or at least we had vaccine industry. It's on the public record. I used to do some consulting for Pasteur Canot, the vaccine manufacturer in North York, now called Sanofi Pasteur. They still manufacture a lot of vaccines there, but they could have been engaged sooner in the supply of vaccinations here in Canada. But a lot of that capacity has been diminished over the past number of years, past 6 years, because of policies of the Trudeau government that have not encouraged pharmaceutical innovations in this country, and that's disappointing. So we'll fix that. I think the Trudeau government has announced, there's not a lot of substance behind those announcements, but has announced some manufacturing capacity going forward. Good first step, but a little bit late.
Some people think one of the reasons why we don't have either vaccine production and or other drug development in Canada as much as we could is because we spend all of our time negotiating low prices and demanding low prices for drugs. And versus the United States and places in Europe that allow higher prices gives the incentive for pharmaceutical companies to do the development in those jurisdictions. And if we want to reverse that, we're going to have to stomach far higher prices for pharmaceuticals. What do you say to that?
I think we can find a balance. There's ways of doing this that allows for, especially innovative medicines, especially more experimental ones, to come into the market. Sure, I would love to have lower prices for everything, but we need to have policies that promote innovation and promote not just on the development side, but throughout the life cycle of a pharmaceutical. A few years ago, I remember meeting the Consul General from Canada to Los Angeles, and he had a great expression. He said, "There's 3 types of Canadians I meet in California: actors, hockey players, and biotech millionaires." And by that he meant that, and you'd be very familiar with this, Brian. The actors and hockey players are obviously why they're in LA. The biotech millionaires are there because they're trained here at University of Toronto, at UTM, at Waterloo, at McMaster, et cetera, in great innovations in health sciences. But when it comes time to commercialize their technologies, to find the capital and find the business climate, to find all those other pieces, they have to go to Boston or California.
Well,
we need to foster.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say we need to foster that environment here in Canada to make sure that those technologies are fostered here, created a climate here. So one of the things that we've got in our platform is something called a patent box, where we're looking to offer a tax break for technologies that are patented here in Canada that are commercialized here. And so basically trying to foster that environment here. And we've got a whole raft of other policies in that same sort of vein.
So part of the problem that you've identified is lack of capital market interest in life sciences, biotech in Canada. The interest that you get from the Toronto Stock Exchange and the people in Toronto is primarily for oil and gas, or in the last little while, cannabis stocks. Right. You most recently were with a financial institution. Any ideas on how we can keep more innovators in Canada, and any changes to the way we raise capital, or we allow companies to raise capital that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, on the capital raising side, I'm not an expert in that space, but I think as I mentioned, the patent box be one example of the type of innovative policy that we can put forward and utilize to encourage the commercialization of technologies here in Canada. We can use our procurement systems, government procurement systems better. We can. There's just so many different ways that we can support our innovative industries. And I think for sure the tax system and how we incentivize capital to stay here. Capital is a global thing. There's no one stopping an investor from Boston from investing in a Toronto company. But what we need to do is ensure that the company stays in Toronto or stays in Mississauga versus moving to Boston. And I think that's the tricky part.
Those Boston venture capitalists demand that you come within half a day's drive of them, and so that's why those biotech millionaires end up relocating their businesses to Silicon Valley.
Yeah, that's part of it. That's part of the reason. But it's also the environment of the companies that are there. I mean, we have those investors here as well, and I think we need to encourage them to look at opportunities here for sure.
Well, when you become Minister of Finance and you want some ideas on how to do that, give me a call, because I got lots of ideas on how we can improve our capital markets for innovative companies here.
You're on for the second part, Brian. I'm not sure I'll ever get to the first part.
We're one of the reasons why the Conservatives haven't won in the last two elections, I think, is because of social conservatism attitudes that weren't in concert with the people in the 905. Both Stephen Harper and Andrew Scheer lost the 905, or lost a lot of seats in the 905. And I think a lot of it was social conservatism. So let me ask you a few questions, if I could, on that.
Sure.
One of the issues that, again, and it's going to be, you're going to say it's wedge politics, but let me ask you about them. You had said on the vaccine that you believe it's sort of a person's right to choose what gets injected, and so the Trudeau government has been saying that they believe in regards to abortion, it's a woman's right to choose, but the attitude of Aaron O'Toole is that it's the doctor's right, because he doesn't have to recommend another or refer even if he doesn't want to provide the abortion, he doesn't have to refer to another physician. He's allowed to with his conscience.
That's not true.
Okay,
that's not true.
Explain the truth.
That's not true. So what he has said is that a doctor can refuse to provide that service, but he or she does need to provide a referral. That is the policy.
Okay, so it's okay for a doctor to refuse, but they have to provide a recommendation for referral.
Correct.
Okay, and where do you stand? Can I ask on abortion and women's right to choose?
Sure. I'm pro-choice, and my daughters regularly remind me that I'm not allowed to have an opinion because I don't have a uterus. That's their statement, and I think that is probably the best campaign advice that I've received from my daughters. One
of the bills that the Tories voted against in the last Parliament was something on conversion therapy, where the Liberals were trying to outlaw conversion therapy, which would conversion therapy is when organizations try to persuade homosexuals that they don't have to be homosexual. Which way would you vote on that bill?
I would have voted I would have voted against conversion therapy. The bill had some flaws to it. I've talked to some members of the current caucus who voted against it because of some of the flaws. But the policy of the Conservative Party is to be against conversion therapy. It is not. It's not therapy, and it's actually nothing about conversion. The concerns that some members of my future caucus colleagues had were with respect to religious rights and things like that, and criminalizing religious activities. My attitude is, and I've read the bill, is that no bill is perfect, but that bill was sufficient in making it clear that conversion therapy is not something that should be sanctioned by government in Canada.
Do we need more gun control in Canada or less?
We need effective gun control. We need gun control that is focused on actually controlling guns at our borders and keeping them out of the hands of gangs and criminals, rather than on photo ops and symbolic action. My frustration is the most recent gun control bill, for example, banned guns that were already banned and have been banned for 30 or 40 years. To what end? I want to see actual effective border controls. I want to see enforcement at the borders. I want to see bad guys with guns, when they can conduct crime with guns, serve longer and stiffer jail sentences.
Should governments buy pipelines?
Not as a rule. The private sector should be involved in the delivery of energy. The Trudeau government was kind of forced into buying a pipeline because it had mucked up the regulatory environment to the point that they could not, they couldn't see it through. We need to have pipelines in order to get those products to market effectively and efficiently. We're going to have some oil and gas needed for many more decades to come, obviously a declining amount if as we move to the electrification of our energy sector. But the policies of the Trudeau government have been wholly inconsistent for so long that I don't see how they can be trusted with figuring out that policy going forward.
We're chatting tonight with Michael Raz. He's the Conservative candidate in Mississauga Lakeshore. We're going to take a break and come back with some concluding comments in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I've had the pleasure over the course of the last couple of weeks, and I'm going to continue this, of showcasing via an interview candidates from different parties. I had a really interesting interview with a Green Party candidate that I think highly of, a Liberal Party candidate, and a Conservative Party candidate. And I'm going to continue doing this. And Michael Raz, who's the Conservative candidate in Mississauga Lakeshore, is got a great resume. And in addition, given the polls, there's probably, I would suggest, a high likelihood he's going to win. And I'm not going to try to get him overly confident, but Mississauga Lakeshore is probably the most conservative riding, or conservative oriented riding, in Mississauga. For the Liberals to win, they've got to win every seat. For the Liberals to win a majority, they got to win every seat in Mississauga. And where the polls were maybe a couple of months ago, that was a possibility. With the polls neck and neck, I think what you've got is a situation comparable to the 2011 election, or the 2014 election, 2011 or 2008 election. In 2008, the Liberals and Conservatives split the ridings in Mississauga, and it ended up being a Conservative minority. In 2011, it was the NDP that did extremely well with Jack Layton, took votes away from the Liberals. The Conservatives in most ridings went up by only a point or two, but that point or two increase was enough, given the vote that went away from the Liberals to the NDP, to elect, I think, every single riding, maybe all but one, as Conservative. And so, it's going to be interesting. And I think with polls that are neck and neck, or polls such that the Conservatives are doing well, if there's one riding in Mississauga that goes Conservative, I think it could be Mississauga Lakeshore. And so Michael Raz may be in caucus if it's a minority, and a minority either way, Liberal or Conservative. So that's kind of interesting. So
I want to correct you on one thing, which is that I think we're competitive in all the seats in Mississauga. I may be biased in this view, but in speaking with the candidates in the rest of the ridings, they're feeling the same thing that I'm feeling at the doors, which is a great deal of dissatisfaction with Justin Trudeau, and a real energy behind O'Toole and our platform. So I think we're going to be competitive everywhere, and I'm not taking anything for granted. I'm running as if I'm 10 points behind, if not more, and working hard every day. So in fact, you're taking me off the doors today, Brian. I should be out there knocking on doors instead of talking to you.
Is the right attitude. The issue, Michael, a year ago, probably because primarily of what happened in Minneapolis, St. Paul, was Black Lives Matter and institutionalized racism. Do we have institutionalized racism in Canada? And if so, what should we do about it? And if not, what should we do about it?
Yeah, absolutely. We have racism in Canada. It's both institutional and held personally, and we need to do what we can to root that out. I think I've had some interesting conversations with some of the Muslim community here in this riding, and so I'll take them as an example. And I know that their experience with racism is different than other people's experience with racism, and so I don't want to generalize. But one of the things that they said to me, which was interesting, and I think challenges all of us, is that what we need to start with a basic level of safety. The Muslim community needs to feel comfortable going for an evening walk and not looking over their shoulder when somebody's driving down the street. That basic level of safety is something that we all take for granted, and we need to be able to hold for everyone. So if there is racism in any of our institutions, we need to root that out. I applaud, for example, some of the things that Stephen Lecce, the Minister of Education, has done in Ontario to root out the racism that has become endemic in the school board system here in Peel. I think some of that work can serve as a model for what we need to do at the federal level as well. I think the way we address racism is through our individual and collective action to find ways to reach out and listen and understand other people's lived experiences and overcome those. At the same time, let's try to celebrate what makes Canada so great, rather than tearing it down by tearing apart our history. I think I can celebrate the country that, for example, Sir John A. Macdonald made and has created, and understand that it was imperfect at the time. It remains imperfect, but it is getting better every day. Let's build this country up to get to that space where we need to be. And I think we do that by continuing to strive forward rather than looking backward and tearing down.
This past spring, we became even more aware of the tragedy of residential schools.
Indeed.
What do you think we need to do there?
Well, if practically speaking, from a policy point of view, implement the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report and all those other pieces. The biggest thing we can do as the rest of the citizens of this country is listen and grieve with our Indigenous friends. Understand the pain that they've been put through, and work hard to understand where they're coming from and where they've been, and work hard to sympathize with them, but also work hard to make sure that we're integrating those perspectives into our institutions. So you mentioned off the top that I was the chair of the Justice of the Peace Appointments Advisory Committee for Ontario. I was appointed by the Ontario Attorney General. Just finished that work a few months ago before I started this little endeavor. One of the things that I'm quite proud of, didn't get a lot of publicity, but we were asked as a committee to recruit up to 7 specific Indigenous justices of the peace for the Ontario justice system. We found 12 and appointed 12. So we actually went over and above what the request was. We placed Indigenous justice of the peace in every corner of the province, and there now are, I think, 30 of 300 and some odd justice of the peace in the province of Ontario are Indigenous. Those Indigenous justice of the peace are then reaching out into the community, into the justice sector, into the community that they are presiding in, and helping to help their fellow community members understand the Ontario and the Canadian justice system a bit better. I'm really proud of that work, and really proud of the efforts that were made to break down some barriers. And it started with my outreach to Indigenous communities across Ontario, especially in the north, to recruit candidates to even apply. So we had we appointed 12, and I think we had well over 100 Indigenous people apply for these positions. And it was my honor to interview them and vet them for this position. And it's been great to see them actually appointed.
Excellent. Last question. You got 30 seconds or a minute or something like that at the door. Someone's impatient opening it, and they say, "Why should I vote for you?" What do you say?
I give them 2 positives and 1 negative. We'll start with the negative. Justin Trudeau and his government don't deserve to be reelected. They've called this election unnecessary election in the midst of a pandemic, and they've not shown that they deserve it. On the positive side, Aaron O'Toole and the Conservative team has a positive, forward-looking vision and a plan that is comprehensive and a serious plan for the serious challenges of the day. It's a conservative plan for contemporary problems. The third part, which is also a positive, I'm looking for the support from people of Mississauga Lakeshore because I want to serve. I think I can serve. I look forward to helping constituents with their problems, and I think I can bring a great deal to the table to help the people of Mississauga Lakeshore.
Michael Rass, the Conservative candidate in Mississauga Lakeshore. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Good luck.
My pleasure. Thanks, Brian.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for joining us. Good night, everybody.